Imagine getting kicked off your own front porch because some power-hungry HOA president didn't like the way your rocking chair looked. Now imagine turning the tables so hard that the same HOA ends up begging to rent your land just to keep their community pool. This is the story of how a quiet cabin owner outwitted an entire neighborhood board with nothing but grit, legal know-how, and the ultimate revenge plan. If you love stories where justice is served cold and karma strikes with perfect timing, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the next one. The smell of pine was strong that morning. Mist clung to the forest like it didn't want to leave. Birdsong floated through the air. A distant woodpecker tapped somewhere deep in the trees, and my coffee steamed gently in the mug between my palms. It should have been peaceful. It was supposed to be. But then came the sound of heels on gravel, sharp, authoritative, followed by the flinty voice. That always made my stomach twist. "Excuse me, ma'am." I looked up from my porch, and there she was, Karen Delaney, president of the Valley Creek Homeowners Association, blonde bob, styled into sharp angles, sunglasses too large for her face, clipboard in, hand like a badge of authority, flanked by two rent-a-cop security guards who looked like they played too much paintball on the weekends. "You are in violation of Article 12, Section C of the Community Guidelines," she said. Her tone clipped and smug. I blinked at her, still half asleep. "Excuse me?" I said. "This is my cabin." Karen smiled. That small, tight smile she wore when she knew she was about to ruin your day. "The porch you are currently occupying extends beyond the acceptable aesthetic perimeter set forth by the HOA charter," she said. "It was never approved." I laughed. Short, confused. "Karen, I built this cabin myself. That porch is 6 feet deep and sits on my property. What perimeter are you talking about?" One of the guards stepped forward. "Ma'am, you need to vacate the porch immediately, or we will have to write you up and possibly fine you." I stood. The wood creaked beneath my bare feet. "Write me up. This is my land. I'm not in your HOA. My address isn't even listed under your jurisdiction." Karen held out the clipboard like it was a holy relic. "Our new map includes Lot 42, and all adjacent structures fall under HOA governance. We sent a notice 2 months ago. You had a 30-day window to appeal. It's closed." I stared at her. The fog didn't seem so peaceful anymore, more like it was choking me now. "You're telling me I can't sit on my own porch?" She smiled wider. "It's not about sitting, dear. It's about compliance." The guards moved in, not touching me, but close enough I could feel their cologne. The neighbors were starting to gather. A few walked dogs, pretending not to watch. One woman sipped a smoothie and smirked. Another shook his head and disappeared into his truck. My hands trembled. I felt like a trespasser on my own land. I stepped down onto the gravel path and turned around to face my home. Sunlight had broken through the trees now, lighting up the warm wood I had stained by hand. I remembered hammering in those porch rails, measuring every plank twice, sweating through the summer just to make something that felt like peace, and now Karen was erasing it with a clipboard. "You'll be receiving a notice of fine by mail," she said. "And if the structure isn't brought to compliance within 14 days, we'll file for a lien." "You're bluffing," I said. Her smile didn't move. "We never bluff." She turned and walked away. The guards followed. One paused to glance at my porch like he was measuring it. Then they were gone. Just like that, my morning was ruined. My porch was no longer mine. And I felt small in a place that had always made me feel safe. I spent the rest of that day digging through old folders, maps, deeds, whatever legal paper trail I had left over from the purchase. I found a dusty folder marked Cabin Valley Creek. Inside were survey maps, parcel numbers, a bill of sale. My lot was Lot 42, but it had no HOA jurisdiction listed. It was part of an old development plan that had been scrapped years ago. I had bought it cheap. Remote, private, off-grid. HOA had expanded last year. I remembered the mailers. The bright-colored postcards. "Join our community," they said. "Vote for better roads." They said I had tossed them in the trash. I never signed a thing. I called the county office, asked them if my property was officially part of Valley Creek HOA. The woman on the phone typed for a while. Your lot is technically adjacent but not included in the original filing. However, the HOA did submit an updated community map last spring. It's under review. Nothing finalized yet. That was all Karen needed. A pending map and some smoke and mirrors. She counted on people folding. I wasn't going to fold. The next HOA bulletin arrived the following morning. A bright yellow sheet pinned to my mailbox. Reminder structure. Violations must be corrected by Friday together. We beautify. My name was at the bottom, in bold underlined beautify. That was rich coming from a woman who painted her shutters lilac and called it French. Rustics. I walked out to the edge of my driveway and looked down toward the HOA clubhouse. Nestled next to it was the community pool, a sparkling rectangle of blue framed by white plastic lounge chairs and surrounded by a fence of polished cedar slats. Always filled with laughter in summer, always. Crowded with kids and HOA members and Karen herself perched like a queen on her sunbed. Something flickered at the edge of my memory. A map, a line, a lot number. I went back inside and tore through the folder again. Pulled out a larger map. Unfolded it until it stretched across my kitchen table, and there it was, Lot 39 north of mine. Running flat and wide beneath the community area. Directly beneath the pool, I pressed my fingers against the faded ink, and I remembered I owned that lot too. The corner of my mouth twitched. Not a smile, not yet, but close, and suddenly the fog outside looked like opportunity. I stared at the deed for Lot 39 until my eyes ached. I had bought it 5 years ago on a whim. An auction listing buried in an email, undeveloped, unzoned cheap. I had nearly forgotten about it. Until now, it had been nothing but trees and dirt. But now, it was leverage. I folded the map carefully and tucked it under my arm. My boots crunched on the gravel as I walked toward the community center. The pool shimmered under the late morning sun. Children splashed and screamed. Parents lounged with plastic. Cups in hand, Karen sat in her usual chair wearing a wide sun hat and sipping something pink through a straw. She spotted me before I reached the gate. Removed her sunglasses with exaggerated annoyance. You're not allowed past the fence without an HOA wristband, she called. I held up the map like a sheriff with a warrant. I think we need to talk. She stood slowly. The hat came off, the drink set down. She approached the fence, arms crossed. I'm not interested in more complaints about your porch. You had your chance to appeal and you missed it. We follow protocol here. I passed the folded paper through the fence slats. She hesitated, then took it. Unfolded it, brows creased as she read. Her lips moved silently. Lot 39, she said. Yes, it borders the pool property. So what? Not borders, I said. Beneath your pool, your lounge chairs, your precious cedar fence, they're sitting on my land. She blinked. Eyes darted across the paper, then back to me. That's not possible. The HOA has maintained this property for over 10 years. It's common land. Nope, I said. Privately owned by me. Title filed with the county, updated last year. You're trespassing. Her face flushed, a bright pink crawling up her neck like a warning light. Even if that were true, you'd need to file a formal grievance, bring it to vote. The board handles disputes in quarterly sessions. I leaned closer. Or I could just put up a fence tomorrow, start digging, post a private property sign, maybe drain the pool. Send out some trespass notices, your move. She didn't answer, just stared at the map like it had betrayed her. The next morning, the bulletin board exploded. New flyers, bright red borders, urgent notices, emergency HOA meeting. Scheduled residents were buzzing. People asked questions as I walked by. Some gave me strange looks. Others nodded with small grins like they knew something. Delicious was cooking. Karen knocked on my door at noon. No clipboard, no guards. Just her, and a smile that didn't reach her. Eyes, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Why don't you come by the meeting tonight? We can resolve this like neighbors. I invited her in. Offered her a chair. She didn't take it. I'll be there. I said. Bring your map, I'll bring mine. That evening, the clubhouse was packed. Folding chairs filled the main room. A slideshow projector buzzed quietly. Karen stood at the front beside a whiteboard covered in diagrams. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, we've recently encountered a boundary discrepancy regarding community property. It appears there is some confusion about ownership of the land beneath our pool area. I assure you this is a clerical issue, and we are working swiftly with county records to clarify jurisdiction. I stood. Before she could continue, I'd like to present my deed to Lot 39, filed and stamped. The land you believe to be common is in fact privately held by me. Murmurs rippled through the room. People turned to look at each other. Karen reached for the microphone. This is not the time for public accusations, she snapped. It's not an accusation, I said. It's a fact. And if the HOA doesn't vacate the land by next week, I'll be pursuing legal action for unauthorized use, trespassing, and potential property damage. A man in the third row raised his hand. If the HOA built a pool on private land and charged us fees to maintain it, what does that mean for our dues? Another woman stood. Are we liable? If someone gets hurt in that pool and it's not on HOA land who gets sued, Karen's voice wavered. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. There are processes, committees. I let the silence sit, let the fear take root. Then I said, I'm willing to negotiate, but only if the porch violation is revoked. In writing and all pending fines canceled. Karen's jaw clenched. This is extortion. No, this is leverage. The board huddled in whispers. More hands went up, more voices, questions, worry. Finally, one of the older board members stood, a man with thick glasses and a slow voice. We recommend immediate compliance with her demands. This situation could result in significant legal costs. It's in the best interest of the community. Karen's face had turned to stone. She didn't speak as I walked past her, didn't look at me. Outside, the stars were just beginning to appear. The night air was cool, the forest quiet again. And for the first time in days, I stepped back onto my porch, sat down with a fresh cup of coffee and smiled. Let them try again. I still had the deed in my pocket. 2 days passed before the next move came. I thought maybe they had surrendered, that maybe Karen had swallowed her pride and tucked her clipboard away for good. But I should have known better. On the third morning, I found a fresh notice taped to my door. A new violation, alleged illegal dumping. A complaint about my compost bin, too close to the property line, they claimed, attracting pests, creating odor, subject to fine and removal. I read it 3 times then, laughed out loud. It wasn't about the compost, it never had been. Karen had declared war. That afternoon I got a call from the county inspector, polite, apologetic, but firm. There had been a formal complaint from the Valley Creek HOA. They wanted to inspect my property for multiple code concerns. I agreed to the inspection, set the date, then started planning. Karen thought she could paper cut me to death, bleed me with bureaucracy. But I had lived out here too long. I knew every tree, every boundary marker, every inch of soil beneath my boots. I prepared a binder. Photos, survey reports, time-stamped emails. Everything in order. When the inspector arrived, he was young, too young to be jaded yet. And when I showed him the deeds and documentation, he actually smiled. This is one of the cleanest records I've ever seen, he said. I'll file the report today, should clear you of everything. As he drove off, I saw Karen standing at the edge of her driveway watching. Her mouth was tight, arms crossed. She didn't wave. She didn't need to. Later that evening, she went live on the HOA Facebook group. I didn't follow it, but screenshots found their way to me. Neighbors whispered. Someone forwarded the post. She called me uncooperative, a threat to community harmony. A disruption to collective values, said I was endangering property values with my nonconformity. But that wasn't the worst part. She ended the post with a proposal, a special vote to seize use of Lot 39 under eminent domain via HOA Charter Clause 7B Emergency Land Procurement for Community Welfare. It was nonsense. The HOA had no authority to claim land it didn't own, but Karen was counting on confusion. She knew people wouldn't question her. They trusted her in that. Made her dangerous. The emergency vote was set for Sunday, less than 4 days away. She only needed a simple majority, and her lapdogs on the board were already campaigning. I needed a counter move. Not just defense, a strike, a knockout. I spent that night researching HOA law, eminent domain statutes, legal precedents. It wasn't glamorous. Just dry pages and cold language. But somewhere around 2 in the morning I found it, a ruling from 3 years ago, a case just like mine. Private land. Unlawful HOA. Encroachment. The court had ruled in favor of the landowner, and not only that, the HOA had been forced to dismantle all structures and pay damages. I printed the case, highlighted every relevant line. The next day I drove to the county records office, requested a certified copy of my deed stamped and sealed. Then I stopped by a friend, Sam, local real estate attorney, retired, cranky, lived off-grid longer than I had. He took one look at my folder and whistled. "You've got her boxed in," he said. "She tries to claim that land. She's going to open the HOA up to a class action lawsuit. You want me to write something up?" "Yes, and make it sharp." We drafted a cease and desist, formal, precise, with just enough venom to make the message clear. Any attempt to claim Lot 39 would result in immediate litigation. I printed 20 copies, then walked into the clubhouse just as the board was finishing their Friday meeting. Karen was standing at the front again, grinning, spreading her lies. The pool shimmered. In a photo behind her on the slideshow, a symbol of luxury, a jewel of Valley Creek. "Use of Lot 39 is essential to community enjoyment," she was saying. "This is about protecting our lifestyle, preserving value, and ensuring our neighborhood remains the best in the county." I stepped to the front, dropped a stack of letters onto the table with a satisfying thud. "Cease and desist," I said, "for each board member, filed and notarized, and yes, legally binding." Gasps rippled across the room. Someone in the back clapped once before thinking better of it. Karen's face twitched. She grabbed one of the letters and scanned it. Her lips tightened with every line. "You're bluffing again," she hissed. "Then call my bluff and watch that pool vanish under a bulldozer." I left before she could answer. Didn't need to stay. Didn't need to argue. The next morning, a new post hit the HOA group. "Vote postponed pending legal review." No mention of my name. No mention of Lot 39, but I knew, and so did she that night. I sat on my porch again. No violations, no clipboard, just the crickets and the knowledge that I had struck back harder than she ever expected. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned. The sun was barely up when I heard it. A distant rumble, not thunder, too steady, too close. I stepped out onto the porch with my coffee and saw it coming down the road. A truck. Not county. Not utility. Private. It rolled past my gate and parked at the clubhouse. 2 men in reflective vests stepped out. Unloaded survey equipment. Tripods, scanners. My stomach sank. I walked down the hill, met them at the fence. "Can I help you?" I asked. One of them glanced at his clipboard. "Got a service order from the HOA land assessment perimeter check. Said they're doing pre-work for a new fencing project." "Where exactly?" I asked. He pointed. "Pool boundary lounge area, whole north lot." "That's my land," I said. "Lot 39, I own it." The man frowned. "Ma'am, if there's a dispute, we'll pause work, just need it in writing." I pulled the cease and desist letter from my coat, still folded, still sharp. He read the first paragraph and nodded slowly. "We'll back off. This is more than we were told. You have legal counsel." "Yes, and a court date in 2 weeks if they keep pushing." They packed up, drove off. But not before Karen came storming across the lawn. Her voice loud enough to wake half the street. "You had no right to interfere," she shouted. "I authorized that survey. It was scheduled through official HOA channels. You authorized trespassing," I said. "And the next person who steps foot on Lot 39 gets a visit from the sheriff." "You don't scare me. You're a bully, a parasite." You're tearing this neighborhood apart for attention. No, you did that, I said. When you thought your little clipboard gave you the power to control people, to punish them for having rocking chairs and compost bins and pine trees. She took a step forward. You're finished here. I'll get that land one way or another. You can't fight the whole community. I don't have to, I said. I just have to wait, because your lies have an expiration date and it's coming fast. She walked off without another word, but her shoulders weren't square anymore. There was something sagging in her stride that night. I made a phone call. A neighbor named Marcus. He'd lived here longer than anyone. A quiet man kept to himself. But he had once served as HOA president before. Karen pushed him out, told him everything. The violations, the threats, the boundary, the survey. He listened in silence, then said, "She's overplayed her hand. If you're ready to end this, I can help." The next day, Marcus invited half the neighborhood to a backyard barbecue. No HOA banners, no agenda, just burgers and beer and stories. People came curious, tired of the drama, hungry for truth. He stood up with a paper in his hand. The HOA was founded to serve us, he said, not to punish, not to intimidate. What's been happening to our neighbor here is wrong. He laid out the facts. The illegal vote attempt, the fabricated complaints, the false claims of eminent domain. People murmured, nodded. Then someone stood, then another, then a third. By the end of the night, 30 signatures were collected. A petition to recall Karen as HOA president. Effective immediately, 2 days later the special meeting was called. Karen entered flanked by 2 board loyalists, but the room was already full. And not with allies. Marcus stood at the front, with the petition in one hand and a motion document in the other. We, the undersigned homeowners, hereby vote to remove Karen Sloan from the position of HOA president on grounds of misconduct, abuse of authority, and misrepresentation of HOA powers. Karen tried to object, tried to speak, but the vote had already begun. Hands raised one after another until the count was overwhelming. She stood frozen, then turned and left. No speech, no tantrum, just the sound of her heels on tile as she vanished through the door. The next week everything changed. The violation against my porch was officially rescinded. Fines voided. My property file scrubbed clean. A new policy was passed. Any use of HOA funds or authority against a private landowner required a full vote and legal review. Lot 39 was marked clearly on the community map. Now private, untouchable mine, and the best part, the pool. Still on my land, I sent the board a letter. Rent agreement, $1 a year. As long as no more violations showed up on my door. They signed it with shaky hands and forced smiles, but they signed it. Now I sit on my porch in peace. The rocking chair creaks under me. The wind smells like pine and charcoal. Kids laugh down at the pool. Dogs bark in the distance, and Karen moved 2 towns over. I hear she joined a new HOA, same clipboard, same straw hat, different neighborhood. They'll learn soon enough as for me. I just sip my coffee, smile at the trees, and rock gently into the quiet victory I built with patience. One deed, one boundary, one perfect checkmate at a time.